Getting back to our image, we're going to go back to our layers here. We're just going to delete this layer. We just used it as a little example. And let's click our layer back visible. Clicking on my layer mask, I now have the option to change the density of our layer mask. And this is where our brush tool comes in. Now, we're just going to kind of start here. Again, let's just choose our brush tool, this Fleur Hair 1. I'm going to paint white on my layer mask. And you're going to see, basically, I'm kind of painting in hair just like it is here on my image. Now, this can take a while. It's a very useful technique. It can take a little while. I wouldn't recommend doing a person's entire head of hair like this, because it's just going to take you a long time, but it can give you very natural results. And the great thing about this technique is that you can use it even if you have a very complicated background, okay? Because you're kind of making up where this hair is. Painting this in here, let's just do a couple more strands here. There we are. And we'll bring our density up. There we are. So you can see I'm basically just painting in this information, and we're painting this on our layer mask. So we went from this on our layer mask, where it was just a, remember it was just a line, looked like this. Now we're individually painting these hair strands back. Now you may notice as I do this, it's painting back some of my background as well, right? Because we're just painting light on our layer mask. So how do we avoid that? Well, let's go ahead and just undo those brush strokes if we can. There we go. Because we just painted, if I lower my density here, we just painted outside of the actual hair of my subject, and that just painted that visible. So one technique is to paint on your layer mask, which is what we're doing here. Okay. Another technique is to just create a new layer, and with the same exact brush tool, simply sample the color of the hair and just paint that color of the hair. There we go. And then it doesn't, see, I can just keep painting out here. Obviously we're not going to, but at that point it doesn't at all matter, you know, where the layer mask is and isn't. We're just simply painting the hair. There we are. And the goal is to paint relatively densely right near the edge of the hair. So I just use the lasso tool. There we are. Just use the lasso tool to create this edge, which looked very like just a hard edge and very kind of fake a second ago. And now, so you can build in some flyaway hairs. And then you can even use your eraser tool if you want to kind of erase them away and just get a natural look to it. So we had a very hard edge right here just a minute ago, and now you can see just with that brush tool and that small brush, I'm able to paint it back, and it looks a lot more like natural hair. In this particular image, I wouldn't necessarily do this for the entire image, so let's go ahead and tackle this image, and we'll use painting where we need it. We're going to hold Shift and click on our layer mask. That's going to temporarily disable the layer mask. And then I'm going to select color range on my background. So let's click on our layer. We'll go to select and down to color range, and we're going to click on our background. Okay, which again just selects our background. And you can see, especially in some areas like here, we have a really nice separation between our subject's hair and the background. So let's hit OK. Now that turns the background into a selection, and we actually want the inverse of this selection. We'll go to select and down to inverse, and now it's selecting the hair. If we click back on our layer mask, I can use my brush tool and just paint white on my layer mask. What I prefer to do, because I can't really see what's going on because I have these little marching ants in the frame, I like to hit Control or Command H. And that will hide those little marching ants. My selection is still active, but I just don't see those little indications of it. So Control or Command H, and that hides it, and now I'm able to paint back my subject's hair in just the areas that we selected. There we go. So we'll kind of paint this back here. All right, and paint it back right down to about there. And again, it's getting pretty messy down in this area, so that's where we'll clean everything up with our brush tool. There we go. And we do have some other techniques for taking care of fringing as well. We'll get into those in a minute. We actually have a whole section on that. So let's use our brush tool for this area. So we're going to start on this layer mask, hit B for the brush tool. We're going to use this brush tool that we already made. Now before we painted white, remember we painted white on the layer mask, making the areas visible. You can actually use this to paint black on the layer mask as well. And again, it can take a little bit of time. Maybe we'll just choose a slightly larger brush for now. So I'm painting invisible my background. I don't need that to be visible, right? Yeah, larger brush works well here. It's just a matter of timing, really. It's like you could totally use a small brush here, but it would just take you a bunch more time to paint it invisible. So let's focus right here. So that doesn't look real at all. Let's make a new layer. We'll use our brush tool and we'll choose this hairbrush, and I'm going to choose this color now. There we go. So we're just painting with our brush tool using this color of the hair. There we are. Because I kind of just painted back invisible a lot of, these little areas there. And now you can kind of go back and forth a bunch. Now we're just kind of painting back some of the hair here. Right over top of there. And it can take a little bit of practice to feel like, comfortable with this and feel like you're, painting something that actually does, in fact, look like hair. Kind of go, in circles like this a little bit, so it kind of dips out from the hair and kind of comes back in. It just creates like some natural hair-like patterns as well. And then you kind of want to dip out the other way like that, and that will kind of create some little flyaway hairs and make it just like little things like this will just make it look more realistic, basically. Okay, and if you don't like any of them or you want to get rid of some, you can just use there we go. I'm going to hit E for my eraser. Let's turn on transfer. I'm going to turn my flow jitter to pen pressure. And there we go. I'm just going to kind of erase the ends. So you can see I could erase this all away, but I'm just going to kind of erase the ends so it just kind of fades out. And there we go. So looking at, just that area, for instance, we were able to turn that into an area that really does look like hair. So you can start to see how effective these tools can be. Let's go ahead and bring that in there as well. Let's continue on our journey. We're going to just paint black on our layer mask. So there we go. We're going to paint black on our layer mask with our subject on it. We're going to go right up to the edge of the natural hair there. And my suggestion is to kind of do this like one area at a time. Now the great thing about using this technique, although it does take a little bit of time, it will work in pretty much any situation that you give it. Whether your subject is on a complicated background or a simple background, any color of hair, it really doesn't matter. There we are. And your selections are going to be really nice. You'll be able to, let's say you want to put your subject onto a new background, you'll be able to put your subject onto any background, and it's going to fit very well. Alright, let's just erase that away. We're just going to paint that back. Okay, so we're going to kind of work on this section. There we are. So just painting black on my layer mask here. And now let's create a new layer. We use that same brush we made earlier, so this hairbrush. And now you can see you can sample lighter colors. Now, when it comes to light colors, there's a bit of a technique here. So I always recommend starting with, if you have a layered area like here, okay, I recommend starting with your dark colors first and then bringing those light colors in. Okay, just a little bit of a, allows you to layer it in. Now, the other option you have here is you can actually bring in something called color dynamics, and you can give a little bit of a brightness jitter. And what that will do is create a large brush here. Let's sample this color here. If I apply one brush stroke and another brush stroke, you can see that each of these brush strokes, some of them are lighter and some of them are darker. There we go. Let's just up our flow a little bit. You can hit shift and change your flow number. So some of these are lighter, some of these are darker. You can bring your brightness jitter way up and you'll have some that are real dark and some that are real light. Or you can kind of bring it down and you'll get variation that's more similar to each other. So this is another great tool because each individual hair strand, is going to be a different amount of light than the one next to it, just because it's catching light differently and hair has variation in it. When painting light hair, I highly recommend using a brightness jitter. Okay? Now, there's an option here, apply per tip, which will do something like this. Okay? It has its own cool uses. Okay? In this case, you don't want to do that. So if yours looks like this, just turn off apply per tip, and then you can get something like this. Okay. So let's choose, I'm going to bring my size down to 4 pixels again. There we go. And here with our brush tool, we're going to paint in, so we're going to start with our darks. Just get like this background area looking natural. Okay, and then we're going to select out my lighter colors. So we'll select out our lights, and you'll see I'm just able to paint right over top of the existing lights. And then for this, we're going to turn on our brightness jitter quite a bit. Alright, and we'll just kind of come down here. Maybe sample that color. Kind of paint these in. And you can see how they're kind of coming in over top of the darker areas. Grab a little bit of a lighter color from the hair. And I'm holding Alt or Option, by the way, to sample here. There we go. And sample some dark areas, and then sample some light areas to kind of cover it up. And I'm kind of curving around there to kind of try to follow the line of the hair. So, here we are. Grab the eraser tool and kind of feather some of this stuff out. It's not incredibly easy to do this, but it is effective, and it'll work in many, many different situations. Let's just grab a lighter color there. You can see I had hair wasn't exactly realistic looking there. There we are. Looking good. I'm just going to actually mask out this hair here. Sometimes it's easier to just completely mask out the existing hair and then just kind of paint your own in. You can kind of use the existing hair as a little bit of a cue of where the new hair should be. But yeah, it's usually easier to just kind of like paint the existing hair out and then paint your new hair in. turn our brightness jitter back on. There we go. Paint some light colors. Again, you always want to kind of paint light colors over your darks. All that area, pretty much, we went from, from this to that, again, just with using the brush tool. And I think that looks just a little bit fake. So let's just paint dark there just a little bit more. Paint this brown in there. There we go. That's looking pretty good there. So again, all that's just with the brush tool. Now, if I make this layer visible and invisible, this background layer here, you can see, or I change the color, you're going to see it looks really good. We put it on a black background, a light background. Whatever background you put it on, it looks really good because we've literally painted every single individual strand of hair.